Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's an environmental philosopher as well as an author and the author of the debut book, Man's Search for Sustainability. No other than Mr. David Auge.
That's correct.
Welcome, Mr. David, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Well, Daniel, thank you very much for having me on your program. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak about sustainability and man's search for sustainability as a background. I have been in this particular business of dealing with environmental management and sustainability for approximately 35 years. And this book, which I've written, is an effort to try and bring to the table a conversation that I believe the next generation needs to have under the very concept and word of sustainability. There's been a lot of confusion, frustration, issues that surface because of this. And the book is an attempt to bring those groups back together and not make it such a politically charged term. My book is dealing with, and hopefully not so esoteric that it loses a lot of people, but it's dealing with two communities, insect communities here on this planet, who many people recognize as being uh, polar opposites in the idea of sustainability, but something we can learn from, that is honeybees and desert locusts. And that's what I bring to the conversation is hopefully analogies, representations of these two communities and what we as humans can learn from them.
Mr. David OJ, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. The title evokes Viktor Frankl's classic Man's Search for Meaning. How does this frame your argument? Is sustainability to the new essential meaning for humanity in the 21st century?
Good question. Good question about Viktor Frankl and how does he find his way into what I'm talking about here. Viktor Frankl, if your readers and listeners don't know about him, was an Austrian neurologist and psychologist who found himself um, in Nazi concentration camps during the Second World War. He has developed what's called the field of logotherapy, and it's dubbed the Third Viennese School of Psychology. Uh, as background, I've read his book and am familiar with his works. As background, I felt that in his search for what would drive people to sustain their life for one more day was a way that I could perhaps bring the same concept to life for those that read my book. Frankel spent a total of 3 years in these camps. He was in Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, Kaufering, and Turkenheim. Now, he lost his father in the Terezin ghetto, his brother and mother at Auschwitz, his wife at Bergen-Belsen, his sister at Stella, which was uh, actually his sister Stella was able to escape. So here's the concept, Daniel, that I bring to the table from what Viktor Frankl had. Viktor Frankl was in the infirmaries of these different concentration camps. And as a doctor, as in a situation where the entire population was on death row, and were being told to die, or we're going to work you to death. He had the opportunity to study because they were in the infirmary with him, individuals who wanted to live one more day, who wanted to continue their life in almost an absolutely hopeless situation. And he found, and he lists in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, the three, what he believed, concepts these people had for living one more day. He found that some people had had something in them that they needed to perform or write or provide to the rest of the world. There was a second group who had a desire to touch or reach or be in contact with some other person before they ended the life here on this earth. And then he had a third group, and that was a group that he spends most of his time talking about. They were group that saw that there was a bigger picture for their part of this life here. He found that there was a search for meaning within that group that drove them to sustain their life one more day. And that concept of man search for meaning, and meaning being sustaining their life for one more day because that's what they were searching for, is what I found here as well. The word sustainability, Daniel, is seen by many people as a goal. We need to have a sustainable city. We need to have a sustainable business. But they don't quite define sustainability. Sustainability is a normative term. It's a concept that describes something. Just like something is more or less beautiful, that means more or less in person who's visualizing it, uh, something that they see greater beauty in. The same thing with sustainability, more or less sustainability. That is a desire for it to see one more day and to move forward. Many times we've taken this and said, no, it's a goal. I disagree. It is a normative term similar to what Frankl put forth as a search for that which we want to take to the next level. And my book attempts to do just that.
Interesting, Mr. David. And the word is often reduced to green initiatives. How do you define it in a fullest sense, encompassing environmental, economic, and social systems?
Well, once again, sustainability is a measure of both participation and the impact and expectations of people within the society itself that are moving forward. Sustainability takes those things into account. Now, I am trying to get people to see it as normative, not as a completion of an objective, but as a reaching forward toward a continual stepping forward into the life that we have. The two communities I look at are seen as successful in most people's eyes because they're doing exactly what you just asked me about green. They're doing something that we applaud. Um, there are 26 different states that identify a honeybee as their state insect, if you would. The honeybee, though Apis mellifera, is actually European and it comes from Africa prior to its migration into Europe. But here in the United States, we've already painted 26 states as saying that's our particular insect. We applaud the honeybee. Pretty much because we see some efficiency, we see order, we see structure in its community, and we want to reflect that on our own. That, for example, would be the greening of an insect community that the human populace believes is laudable. On the other end of the spectrum are desert locusts. Many people find them at the other end of the extreme when you talk about something that's sustainable because their desire to consume, their desire to replicate until total exhaustion destroys their particular effort as well as the communities they impact. But both the desert locust and the honeybee can teach us something. Can teach us something about greening, can teach us something about sustainability.
Mr. David, why frame the crisis around a search? What is it that you believe humans are ultimately searching for that can only be found through sustainable living?
So let me understand your question, Daniel. Why frame the word man's search
Search?
for sustainability with the word search in the title?
Yes.
Okay. Well, search is what I find happening, especially with the very concept of our seeking another day of life on this planet or another generation beyond ours on this planet. There's a search for decisions to be made and the movement into the future. That search, I think, describes that effort we see all around us. Our decisions for what we're going to do with our family, what we're going to do with the resources we have at our disposal, the government we're going to choose to have over us to direct the society into the next generation. All of those are searches based upon the multitude of options we have before us that we're pursuing.
Mr. David, On the diagnosis and the problem, what is the fundamental disconnect between modern human psychology and the requirements for a sustainable existence on a finite planet?
Okay, Daniel, you're asking what's the conflict we have in our modern society over looking for sustainability?
Yes, Mr. David.
Okay. Well, let me give you an idea I bring out in chapter one. It has to do with philosophical grasps on how we know something, epistemology. And it can be wrapped into two words, mimesis and poiesis. Um, in the past, prior to this generation, actually prior to about the last 150 years, uh, there was a different way of thinking about the world. Um, it was a mimetic view, and it regarded the world as having a given order and a given meaning. And we as humans are required, prior to that time, to discover that meaning and then conform ourselves to it. Poiesis, by way of contrast, sees the world as so much raw materials out of which meaning and purpose can be created by the individual. Prior to the last 150 or 200 years, that particular shift was rather simple. We exist within the confines of the ecosystem that's around us. There's going to be weather changes that'll impact farming. There's going to be an agricultural base upon which we have to be sensitive to the wherewithal of where we live and the resources available. In the last, let's say, 150 or even the last 100 years, we have a greater idea that this is just a bunch of raw materials. What we can do is reshape them in a different fashion, move ourselves forward, and we've lost touch with that fact of learning from what's around us, the mimetic view of looking at this life. Because of that, I think there are lessons from the honeybee population, the desert locust population, that is missing in this grasp for sustainability. It's a very popular term, but it's missing the conversation that I think needs to be brought back to the table. And pardon me.
Interesting. Indeed. We have the technological solutions. What are the deeper human barriers, psychological, cultural, political, that prevent us from adopting them at a scale?
Daniel, that beginning of your question was good. We have the technological ability to solve these things. That's the poetic view that you've just put on the table. We've just got
Mhm.
a bunch of materials here that we need to shape into a different box, into a different vehicle, into a different element. That's what I think is missing. People say, oh, it's just a technological switch. That's all we need to do. No, that's not. We need to see the interaction between the individuals that are around us through the sensitivity of what we have. There's a recent book that I was listening to called The Anxious Generation, and it was talking about Generation Z's ability to communicate and find themselves in a community that's sustainable, that finds itself willing to hug and depend and 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 move forward in this relationship part of it. That's not a technological solution. That's a more of a soft um, issue that has to be brought to the table. These individuals in the concentration camps I was mentioning, their desire to see one more day, those individuals searching for a meaning, were not looking in that concentration camp for a technical solution, a pill or something like that. They were seeing themselves as a picture or a part of a larger picture in this entire existence. Technology in many ways cannot be the panacea that we're looking for.
Mr. David, what is the dominant cultural narrative about progress and success that is inherently unsustainable, and what new story must replace it?
Hmm. Well, one of the things I mentioned, I don't know, a few minutes ago, was participation and expectation. Uh, what the dominant story is that idea of expectation of what we expect the future to be has got to be rewritten as we're part of a larger community already. Um, for example, There was an expectation of just having water available at a residence as opposed to a central part of a village just 150 or so years ago. If you could be able to pipe that water, potable, hopefully clean, from that location to a house, oh, my goodness, we'd arrived. But now we not only have that in the United States and most first world countries, we expect that water's quality to be pretty good. In fact, most people find themselves drinking water that's got an additional RO system underneath the sink in the kitchen so that the water provided by the state is even cleaner. 10, 15, 20 years from now, that expectation of what they believe is a sustainable water source into the house will continue to change as well. That is missing the fact that that expectation of what is a sustainable water source, for example, continues to change. Those individuals that are going to participate in it, the community itself, are going to change as well. So when you're searching for sustainability, you're searching for something that has both participants as well as expectations that continue to move into the future. Do we continue to think that, oh no, it's just a technological solution? We have everybody RO units. Eventually there's distillation columns that purify water further. No, we've got to look at a larger picture that takes these steps and continues them so that this doesn't become, you know, something that makes us all so anxious that we miss the larger picture of how we fit in the world that's here at our disposal.
Mr. David, as environmental philosopher, a debut author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Mm. Well, my short term goal is, if you can see me at least in this video, I've got gray hair. Uh, my short term goal is to move with uh, uh, my family and children into that next phase of my life. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and my relationship with that generation needs to strengthen so that I find myself as a hopefully a beneficial resource to their stepping into the 2030s, the 2040s, the 2050s as a resource to help them. A long-term goal is also perhaps writing my next book, which has to do with a small mining community in Colorado. Uh, Daniel, from background, I was looking not too long ago about um, uh, where my parents came from, and it was Breckenridge, Colorado. Breckenridge, prior to being the ski resort that it is now, was a mining community. Gold mine and silver mines were scattered throughout the hills. Those are perhaps the most unstable communities on planet Earth. People show up in a mining community, especially a gold or silver, to dig in the dirt, pull out whatever precious metals they can find, and leave. They're not there long term. They could care less about sustaining a community. Who cares about educating our children or finding some long term resource here? But they can learn something from that. And in that community of Breckenridge, they had a fascination with baseball. We're talking 150 years ago when most people played baseball without mitts. Most of the individuals who were playing could care less about the Red Sox or the Yankees or the Cardinals. These were small communities. That's my next book, and as I go down that path, I'm going to try and explain further that this grasping for sustainability in that community is something worth talking about and not just wringing our hands over and becoming anxious about.
Looking forward for that book, Mr. David. And please do come over and book 101 review on abstract essay and let's talk about it and let's promote to the world. And looking forward for more success. What would be
Thank
your
you,
piece
Daniel.
of yes? What would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
Well, one of the quotes that came from Viktor Frankl, and I put it throughout my book as well, is a quote from Nietzsche. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow." I would tell those people that there's a why out there. There's a why out there to sustain your life for one more day. There's a why out there to sustain your family and your grandchildren for the next generation. There's a why out there. And when you have that, You can bear it for just that one more day, and you can positively step forward, not in angst and anxiety, but with a positive influence, is what we've been given. Is worth it. Thanks, Daniel.
It's worth it for sure, and thank you for that advice. Mr. David, truly, truly empowering. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Ah, okay. Well, of course, my book, Man's Search for Sustainability and also Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. There's another book out there for those who are even more technically minded. It's called Sustainability Indicators by Simon Bell and Stephen Morse. Sustainability Indicators Measuring the Immeasurable. It's an excellent book that I have found to be worthwhile for those who are trying to put their arms around all of the different factors that sustainability means when they start to think about it.
Thank you for that recommended books, Mr. David. And what is the most inspiring example you came across in your research of a community or country that is genuinely on a path to a sustainable model?
Well, of course, my book is not looking at countries, it was looking at insect communities. Most people disparage the idea that desert locusts can bring to the table anything that we would want to learn from. But there's an interesting things about desert locusts. Desert locusts do not operate like a honeybee hive does with a hierarchical structure and a queen pretty much over the entire workforce. Desert locusts march forward and move forward in concert with the other locusts in their vicinity. For example, a desert locust in its very formation results from some environmental restrictions, which result in a phase change of this insect that looks like a grasshopper into a desert locust. When desert locusts come together, they continually do what's called seek for the center of the group of which they're a part of. And in that seeking for the center, they will be trying to discern within that center force what direction to go toward. Now, they're very driven by the access and of resources so they can consume them. So primarily they're looking to go downwind. They're looking for the possibility of additional rain, which would result in greater vegetation. But that seeking for the center, these small insects who have gone through this phase change have been given, as a result, a brain that's about 30% larger, a flying ability that's greater, and an interaction desire which makes them very gregarious, will, working together, move as a group to that opportunity. And in that seeking after that opportunity, they are extremely successful. Now, successful in their own eyes. In the eyes of a human, a desert locust is a plague of biblical proportions. We see something coming over the horizon that looks like, glittering wings of something like that of millions and billions of insects is, death as we know it because they're going to consume everything in sight. But within that community itself, they've made a concerted decision based upon collective knowledge of the direction they're going to go for the benefit of the entire group. That is something that we see when we look at some of the social media interactions or some of the collective intelligence we're able to get from internet interaction and the sharing of information through the world wide web. All of those things link to that strength that a desert locust brings to our knowledge. I bring that out in the book. The seeking after the center is what it's called about, that I found just very inspiring.
What was the most difficult concept to research and write about, and why?
The most difficult element of the book that I had to research and write about. Hmm. Well, perhaps some of the most difficult concepts, once again, had to do with beneficial aspects of desert locusts. Um, their or our understanding of this phase change that I mentioned is rather new. It was 1920 where the very concept kind of came to the surface. Prior to that, most people didn't see the desert locust as merely what would be identified as a grasshopper, as something other than just a different insect entirely. Since 1920 to the present, We found that to be the case. That this insect being placed into an environmentally restricted area, that is, there's a large presence of vegetation, which then is restricted because of a drought. That change results in this insect changing its color. It goes from green into more of a yellow with black spots. It changes into that. It also changes its operation so it actually likes to be together, from a solitary to a gregarious insect, and then flying and starting to maneuver forward to becoming a plague that operates during the day. The research to look into that is growing. A lot of it's very modern. A lot of it's uh, very curious and scientific in what it can put on the table. For example, one of the motivations of why locusts move forward is both their desire to seek the center of where they can gain food, but also the fact that they're cannibalistic. When you see this insect, and these are called um, there's five instars. These are growths of it till it finally becomes a flying insect. You see it on the ground. It moves forward as if it's marching. Well, people have always thought, well, it's seeking something into the future. Well, at the same time, it's also trying to get stopped from getting bit on the rear end by those other locusts. That particular cannibalistic tendency opens up our eyes to why this insect is maneuvering as it does so. There's some recent research articles about just how many of the desert locusts in a general vicinity are going to maneuver because of the cannibalistic tendencies of those that are in its rear. Um, I learned a lot from that. And the research was, how do I parallel that to our own society? Maybe it's when you're on the internet and you see so many thumbs up. Well, those are great, but a few thumbs down, especially from the influencers out there, are like getting bit in the rear end by these locusts, where your ideas all of a sudden find themselves being challenged beyond what you desire to move forward. And as a result, instead of positively contributing to ideas, you have become just one of the masses, one of the individuals who, because of fear of retribution or negative publicity, are unwilling to shake the status quo. So, Daniel, that was what was difficult, making those parallels. And that's what my book is attempting to do. I want to bring insight to people's understanding of sustainability, especially with these two insect communities, which have dramatic impacts upon the planet in which we live.
For someone feeling overwhelmed and wanting to start, what is the single most impactful first step they can take to align their life with the principles in your book?
Well, I talk about um, carrying capacity in there, maximum sustainable yield, and the fact that being aware of that, being aware of your each individual utilization of resources in a system, is a wise place to start. Now, I don't emphasize that. There are a number of other books that attempt to do that, but I do point out that this is a good place to start. See the ecological concept of carrying capacity and the idea of maximum sustainable yield um, is an important root of sustainability, but it's not the entire thing. It's where most people go and then they stop there. You got to start there, but you have to go to a larger picture of sustain what. And of course, that's where, you know, Viktor Frankl was talking with those individuals in the concentration camp, saying, what is a larger picture than just the water we drink and the air we breathe? I would start there.
Hmm. Powerful, powerful answer, Mr. David. What is a powerful question we should be asking about our daily choices, our investments, and our votes to gauge their alignment with sustainable future?
Well, I guess an important question to be asking yourself is how you come down on the two paradoxes that have divided the camps when you come to the term sustainability. There's something called the paradox of the commons. Here's the picture, Daniel. Imagine you're in a shared pasture where everyone is free to graze their cattle. That sounds ideal, right? But
Yes.
here's the catch, Daniel. If everyone acts self interested, then the pasture gets overgrazed and eventually destroyed. Individuals acting independently according to their self interest deplete the shared resource, even though it's clearly against everyone's long term best interest to do so. And why is it an issue? It challenges the notion that individual action always leads to the best collective outcome. Think national parks, fisheries, litter. It highlights the need for regulations and cooperation to manage that shared resource. So, Daniel, that's one paradox on one side. And many people say, and that's why regulations are written, David. There's this commons, this shared resource of water or air or land. But on the other hand, you have what's called the paradox of the invisible hand. So here's what I want you to imagine, Daniel, that there's a world where everyone once again acts in self interest, yet somehow society benefits. Let's say you got a baker who bakes bread to earn a living, not to feed the community, but to make a living. Yet by doing so, by baking the bread, the baker is providing the food for the many. The paradox reveals this fascinating aspect to human behavior. It suggests that our ambitions can unintentionally benefit others, and it raises the question about the balance between self interest and societal good. Can we rely solely on self interest to drive progress, or do we need a guiding hand to ensure fairness and sustainability? See, that invisible hand promotes the deregulation, where the paradox of the common promotes regulations. Those two paradoxes are going to come together, and people are going to find themselves on either side of it based upon political affiliations, if you would.
Mr. David, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love letters in third season, and movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. David, if you could leave readers with one feeling or one call to action after finishing Man's Search for Sustainability, what would it be?
You know, I would go back to Nietzsche's quote: "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow."
Indeed, empowering. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. David, can you please invite our listeners to support your debut book?
You can go to davidaugebooks.com and you'll see my website and more about this particular effort. Thank you very much, Daniel.
You're most welcome, Mr. David. Yes, people, let's support Mr. David Auge because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. David, thank you so much for your time. Marticon people, see you soon.